My name's Jack. Used to be a cop. Now I call a trailer park a few miles out of town home. Not 'cause I couldn't do better. I probably could. But there's a quiet out here you don't get anywhere else. And the fishing? Best you'll find without burning half a tank getting there. Some mornings I sit by the lake, lying in the water, thermos of coffee in my lap, and for a little while, everything feels right, like the world's not so out of joint. I don't have a lot, but it's enough. My trailer's a bit rough around the edges, but it's mine. Fixed it up myself when I moved in. Replaced the siding, patched the roof, rewired a bunch of outlets. Most folks around here don't bother with that kind of thing. But me? I like having something to work on. Keeps the hands busy. Keeps the mind from wandering too far. Reminds me I still matter. After 25 years on the force, I thought I'd feel more, I don't know, fulfilled maybe, but the pension barely stretches to cover groceries. And once you hand your badge, folks forget your name fast. Still, when I see something off, something wrong, I feel that itch, that pull to step in, to fix it. It's what I've always done. So I fix things for folks around here now. Washing machines, busted fences, leaking pipes. Mrs. Leary over in Lot 7 rings me when her porch steps shift again. Rebuilt the whole back of Joe's trailer after a windstorm nearly peeled it off. I don't ask for much. Sometimes they hand me a beer, sometimes a few bucks, sometimes just a thank you. That's enough for me. Don't get me wrong, I missed the job. I missed the badge, the beat, knowing I was part of something that mattered. But what I miss most, being needed. People trusted me, counted on me when things got rough. I still want that. Maybe that's why I stick around here. These folks, they still need someone like that. I keep it simple. Wake up early, stretch the knees, brew some coffee. If nobody needs anything, I go fishing. Sometimes I just sit on the steps and watch the sun slide across the grass. Not many people do that anymore. Everyone's always chasing something, even out here. But me, I like the slowness of it all. There's a peace in it. There's a smell in the mornings, damp earth, pine, and something else I can't quite name. Smells like memory. Takes me back to being a kid. My granddad had a place by the river. He'd let me tag along, hand him tools, carry his tackle box. Said a man ought to know how to take care of what's his. I think about that a lot. People say I'm quiet. I guess I am. Not much need for words when there's work to be done. But I listen. Folks drop by, sit on my steps, tell me things. Family stuff, money troubles, the weight they carry around. I nod, say a word or two if it feels right. But mostly I just let them talk. Most people don't really want advice. They just want to be heard. I get that. This world's noisy, but it sure don't listen much. So that's me, Jack. Retired cop, part-time handyman, full-time fisherman. Not out looking for trouble. Just try to keep things running smooth. But trouble? Trouble's funny. It always knows where to find you, even when you've stopped looking for it. I was out working on Lenny's fence when I heard the old truck grinding up the gravel road. That engine had a rattle that said it hadn't seen a mechanic since the Clinton years. I looked up, wiped sweat from my brow with the back of a glove, leaned on the hammer. The truck wheezed to a stop just past my trailer. Out stepped Earl Thomas. He's got 30 acres past the tree line. Solid man. Been farming longer than most folks around here been alive. But that morning, he looked worn down. Boots caked in mud up to the ankles. Shirt stained dark across the chest. Not blood, I don't think. Looked more like dirt and worry. "Morning, Jack," he said, tipping his cap. "Mornin'. You all right?" He gave me a slow nod and glanced toward the fence I was fixing. Didn't mean to interrupt. Just figured I'd swing by on the way back. "No bother. What's going on?" I asked. Earl shifted his weight, pulled a hand from his pocket, scratched the back of his neck. "Something happened last night. 3 of my goats got killed. Thought it was coyotes at first. But they were torn up bad. Real bad. Coyotes usually go for the throat. Clean kill if they can," I said. These weren't clean. Scattered. One of them was half a field from the others. Looked like it got dragged. And the tracks, they weren't right. He paused, squinting like he was seeing it all again. I raised an eyebrow, waited. Too wide. 2 deep, not dog prints. And not boots either. I've been around long enough. I know a paw from a shoe. I didn't say anything. Just let the silence settle. Earl leaned against his truck, probably making a fuss over nothing. Maybe just a big dog. Someone's loose mutt. Maybe you call animal control? I asked. He let out a short laugh. Closest we got is Doug from the feed store, and he can't walk 10 feet without wheezing. Look, I know you ain't a cop anymore, but you always had a good head for this kind of thing. Thought maybe you could come take a look. Help me sleep better. I nodded, wiping my hands on a rag. I'll swing by this afternoon. His shoulders relaxed just a little. Appreciate that, Jack. Really do. He climbed into his truck, started up with a growl, and rolled off in a cloud of dust. I watched his taillights fade down the road before turning back to Lenny's fence. Didn't like the sound of it. Not the goats. Not the tracks. But I owed Earl a look. That afternoon, Earl was waiting by the barn when I pulled up. Sun was starting to dip, casting long shadows across the pasture. He waved me over. Then he led the way past the fence, into the field behind the goat pen. Right over here. Happened just past that thicket, he said. We walked in silence, boots crunching on dry grass and packed dirt. The field sloped gently as it rolled toward the hills. I could see the tree line ahead, and something about it felt wrong. Too still. No bird song. Just the hush of a place waiting for something to happen. Earl pointed to a patch near an old stump. That's where I found the first one. The others were farther out. I crouched low. Blood, dried to a rusty smear in the dirt. Bits of fur stuck to the grass nearby. Whatever did this didn't kill to eat. It killed to destroy. I traced the scene with my eyes, followed the drag marks. Something had been pulled, roughly, toward the hills. The trail was clear in the flattened grass, like a wound cutting through the field. Earl stayed back while I followed it. Every dozen paces, new signs. Tufts of hair, scuffs in the bark. Then something else. For deep claw marks raked down the trunk of a sapling. Long, clean. I held my hand up to it. Each gouge was nearly as wide as my fingers. Not a coyote. Not even close. I didn't say anything. Just kept following the trail until it broke through a gap in the brush and began to climb. The dirt here was torn up, the prints deep and wide apart. Whatever it was, it moved fast, and it was strong. I turned back. Earl was kneeling near another blood patch, working a toothpick like it held answers. You find anything? He asked. I gave a slow nod. Trail goes up toward the ridge. I want to take a look up there. Won't be long. He stood and dusted off his knees. All right, I'd come with, but I got to check on the cows before dark. One's close to calving. Go ahead. Just tell the neighbors to keep their pets in. Livestock, too. Lock up the coops and pens, just in case. I said. Earl squinted at me. You think it'll come back? I didn't answer that directly. Just said, it's better to be careful. He nodded slowly. All right, Jack. You be safe up there. He turned and headed for the barn. I watched him go, then turned back toward the trail, eyes on the path climbing into the ridge. The trail was steeper than it looked. Dirt gave way beneath my boots, and the brush clawed at my jeans. Still, I kept moving. The sun had started its drop, painting the hills in streaks of amber and orange, the kind of light that made everything look quieter than it really was. I walked slow, careful. Years on the force had taught me how to move without drawing attention, even out here. There's a rhythm to it. Step. Wait. Listen. Step again. Signs were everywhere now. Torn grass, snapped branches, feathers scattered like confetti, fur stuck to bark, trees stripped like something had pushed through in a rush. Or maybe it just didn't care what it damaged on the way. Then the smell hit. Not rot exactly. Sweet but wrong, like old meat soaked in sugar. It dried out my mouth instantly, made my stomach tighten. I followed it around a cluster of rocks, down into a low hollow shaded by pine. And that's when I saw it. The deer, or what was left of it. It had been torn apart, one whole side stripped clean to the ribs. The bone stuck out sharp, white against red. Its spine was twisted, bent the way no spine should bend. The head was gone, not cut, not chewed, just gone, ripped off, flesh ragged, like something had wrenched it loose with force, not finesse. One leg was missing. The rest were stretched out, like the thing had tried to keep running, even after it was already too late. I crouched beside it. Flies circled in a lazy cloud, but I barely noticed them. The tracks were there too, just like in the field. Wide, deep, spaced in long strides. Not dragging, not staggering. Whatever did this was strong, and it knew where it was going. A few feet past the carcass, I spotted something else. The ground dipped into a shallow pit, maybe 2 feet deep, half covered by branches and old brush. Looked like a den, but not a fox's, and sure as hell not a coyote's. Too wide, too deliberate. I stepped to the edge and looked in. That's when I saw them. Bones. All kinds, scattered, piled, some clean, some not. A few looked like they came from dogs or raccoons. But others weren't animal. There was a hand. Human. Skin still clung in patches, gray and cracked like dried leather. The fingers curled inward like it had been reaching for something when it died. Another hand, half buried nearby. Bits of jawbone, a wrist, teeth still in the gums. I stepped back, slow. My heart didn't race. Training keeps that in check, but a chill worked its way up my spine. Not panic, just that deep, quiet fear that creeps in when you see something that doesn't fit. People had gone missing out here. Didn't make the papers much. Not the kind of folks who get headlines. Hikers, drifters, folks without anyone looking. You hear it in passing, at the gas station, at the feed store. Guy went missing last month. Never found his truck. Probably just wandered off. Most people don't ask more than that. But now I was asking. Because this thing, whatever it was, it didn't kill to eat. It killed to destroy. And now it was edging closer to Earl's land. Closer to fences. To people. Closer to town. I left quick, not running, but with a purpose. That kind of walk where your boots move steady, but your mind's already 5 steps ahead, working angles, planning. The sun was nearly down when I crossed back over the pasture and hit the road. Earl was gone. No one by the barn. I didn't stop to knock. By the time I reached the trailer park, porch lights were flickering on. Kids were still out on the gravel loop, kicking the ball back and forth like it was any other evening. Old man Hollis sat on his porch with his radio, humming low to some tune I didn't know. The world hadn't caught up yet, but it would. Everything looked the same, but it wasn't. I went straight to the bulletin board. Old, leaning thing nailed between 2 fence posts by the mailboxes. Folks use it for everything. Garage sales, free kittens, somebody needing a ride to the doctor in town. I pulled the pencil from the string and took a scrap of paper from the tray. Wrote simple. Stay inside after 6 p.m. Jack, tacked it dead center. Big enough to catch a glance. Whether they listened, that was up to them. I turned and heard chuckles behind me. Mason, mid-20s. Night shift at the gas station. He was with his buddy, the tall one with the rusted-out Honda that sounded like a shotgun every time it started. Mason squinted at the sign, then grinned. Looks like we got ourselves a curfew, he said. His buddy laughed. What for, Jack? The boogeyman. They cracked up, nudging each other like high schoolers. I didn't say a word, just looked at them. Mason held up his hands, half laughing, half apologizing. Hey, man, just messing around. They turned and walked off, still laughing, already talking about some party they had planned for the weekend. I stayed a moment longer, watching the paper. The wind tugged at the corners. But it held. That night, I couldn't settle. I laid on top of the covers, boots off, but jeans still on, shirt bunched under my back. The window beside the bed was cracked just enough to let in the night. Crickets, distant frogs, a breeze working the branches like a tired hand brushing through hair. I didn't fall asleep. Not exactly. Just drifted, slow. 1 minute staring at the ceiling. The next, floating somewhere in between dreaming and listening. My hand rested close to the old rifle leaning against the wall, just in case. When the alarm went off, it didn't blare. It clicked, sharp and fast like tapping, on glass. I bolted upright. That sound meant the trap behind the shed had been tripped. Pressure plate wired to a buzzer, my own rig. It only went off if something heavy stepped on it. Most nights, it stayed quiet. Not tonight. I moved slow, reached for the rifle, and crawled to the window, careful not to knock anything over. The trailer was dark, the only light the soft green glow of the microwave clock across the room. I stayed low, edged up the window, and looked out. At first, nothing. Then, just over the top of the fence line, past the clearing between my lot and the woods, I saw them. Eyes. Red. Too far apart for anything I recognized. Too high off the ground for anything that walked on four legs. They hovered above the brush, motionless, staring. Every hair on my arm stood up. I raised the rifle halfway, kept it low near my hip, squinting through the glass. Then it moved. It stepped forward into a shaft of moonlight. Just enough. Why I saw it didn't make sense. It looked like a dog. If a dog had the head of a rabbit. Its body was wiry, almost stretched, ribs showing, long limbs, thin belly. But the head, short snout, long ears, folded back, eyes like burning coals. It sat upright, legs tucked under, front paws placed straight ahead. Still as stone, I raised the rifle. But before I could aim, it turned, dropped low, and vanished into the brush like smoke. No sound. I stayed frozen, counted to 10, then 20. Only when I was sure it was gone did I move. Quietly, I slid out the door, rifle in hand, and crept around the side of the trailer. My boots barely whispered over the gravel. I reached the edge of the shed where I'd laid the trap, a heavy bear trap I'd picked up years ago at a swap meet. The guy swore it worked on wild hogs. I'd sharpened the teeth myself, added the pressure sensor. It had been triggered. The jaws were open wide. The latch bent slightly at the hinge. Blood. Fresh. A thick smear along the curve of one tooth, and a few dark drops glistening in the grass. There was a trail, thin, scattered, leading toward the woods. But I didn't follow. I stood in the dark a long time, listening. Nothing. Even the crickets had gone quiet. I reset the trap with a gloved hand, wiped the blood away with an old rag from my pocket, backed off, slow. I was never leaving the tree-line. I didn't sleep easy that night. The next morning, just after sunrise, I was sitting out front with a cup of black coffee when I heard a scream from down the row. High, sharp, the kind that straightens your spine before your mind can catch up. A second later, a kid came running barefoot through the gravel, still in pajama pants, tears streaking his cheeks. Eli, lot 12, maybe 9 or 10. I'd fixed his mom's washer a month back. I stood up, set the coffee down. His mother came rushing out, scooped him up, started pulling him back toward their trailer. And that's when I saw it. A sheep, sprawled across their front steps. Its body was torn open from neck to belly, inside spilling out like someone had reached in and yanked everything loose. Blood soaked the wood of the stoop, dripped down into the dirt below. One leg was twisted under it wrong, and the head looked like it had been slammed into the siding. Hard. I didn't need to take a closer look. I already knew. Same thing that killed Earl's goats. Same thing that gutted that deer up on the ridge. Same thing that stared at me in the dark just hours ago. The sheep hadn't wandered here. It hadn't died by accident. It had been brought, dragged from whatever pasture or pen it came from, hauled across roads and lots and gravel trails, and dropped right there on the front steps of an occupied trailer, where a child would be the one to find it. That wasn't a kill. That was a message. It meant the creature was getting bolder. It had left the woods, crossed open ground, stepped into a park full of people, and delivered a warning in the plainest way it could. And if it could drag livestock all the way here, without anyone hearing or seeing a thing, then it wasn't going to stop at animals forever. Maybe it had come after another dog, maybe a person, maybe a kid. That's when I decided I wasn't going to wait and see. By late afternoon, I had everything packed. My old cop duffel, heavy with the tools I figured I'd need, thick gloves, nylon rope, a hunting knife, my Winchester, extra rounds, and whatever else felt right in my hands. When I was ready, I climbed into the truck and drove the back road past Earl's Fields, toward the ridge where the trees thickened. I parked behind a wall of overgrown brush. The sun was low now, just barely holding on. As I stepped out and closed the door soft, I knew I'd hit the ridge at dusk. Light stretched across the treetops, like gold poured over leaves. That kind of light disappears fast. The ridge wasn't far, but the climb slowed me down. Loose dirt gave underfoot. I moved carefully, checking the brush, watching for broken twigs. Anything fresh. I'd memorized this path the last time I came through, followed the same turns, until I found the clearing with the deer's body, or what was left of it. The smell hit before I saw it. Rot. Strong and sour. Worse than before. I pushed past a low-hanging branch, and there was again. The remains had sunken into the dirt, barely holding shape. Flies swarmed in clouds. But I waved them off and moved past, toward the den. I'd seen it last time, a shallow dip in the earth, half hidden under brush and stone. But now, standing over it in the fading light, I realized I hadn't really looked. Not closely. I crouched, brushed aside the dry sticks, and leaned down with the flashlight. The beam slid across the dirt wall and disappeared into black. It went deeper than I thought. I dropped the rope, not to climb, just to mark my way back. Then I pulled on the gloves, gripped the rifle tight, and eased my way in. The opening was wide enough at first, just tall enough to crouch. The floor was packed dirt, soft in places. The ceiling hung low. As I moved forward, it narrowed, tighter, until I had to shuffle sideways between the walls, my shoulders brushing each side. I kept the flashlight pointed ahead, scanning every inch. The air smelled of wet soil, and something older, like meat long gone. The tunnel curved, then opened into a small chamber. My boots crunched on something. Bones, dozens of them, chewed, broken, scattered across the dirt floor. Some were small, others weren't. And then I saw the body, lying against the far wall, twisted, half covered in earth. I stepped closer. The legs were gone below the knees, chewed clean to the bone, one arm bent the wrong way. The face, bloated, eyes gone, jaw slack. But I recognized him. It was Trent McKee. He lived a town over, ran a pumpkin patch in the fall, had a booth at the festival every year, with hot cider and carved gourds. Used to laugh too loud after 2 beers, and talked about maybe buying a second truck for deliveries. He wasn't a friend, but I knew his face. Now it was just hanging there, slack and cold, under a ceiling of dirt. This thing, whatever it was, it didn't just eat goats and sheep. It didn't just drag carcasses around to scare people. It killed people, took them from wherever they were, dragged them here, and ate them in pieces. It had chosen Trent, and from the look of it, it had taken its time. I stared at what was left of him. I stood in that small, dirt-packed room, longer than I should have. My knees ached from crouching, and the weight of what I'd seen settled hard on my back. I wasn't a young man anymore, and this thing, whatever it was too fast, too strong, to take head on. Going in with just a rifle would be suicide. I'd been lucky it hadn't come back already. I backed out the way I came. Slow, steady, rifle up, checking every inch behind me. I made it to the mouth of the den, just as the last of the daylight faded from the ridge. I could see my rope still trailing from the brush. I didn't waste time. I pulled it up, threw it in the bag, and got to work. If I couldn't face this thing in close quarters, then I'd bring it out, on my terms. I went through my gear: jerky, a lighter, half a bottle of alcohol from the first aid kit, a roll of duct tape, a rag, an empty canteen. Not much, but it'd do. I poured the alcohol into the canteen, stuffed the rag down the neck, wrapped it tight with tape so nothing would leak. I wasn't trying to make a firebomb. This wasn't about burning it out. I didn't want to start a wildfire and take the whole ridge with it. I wanted to choke it, flush it out like a rat. I dropped some powdered chili from an old camp pack into the mix too. The stuff burned your nose just being near it. Should do more than enough damage. In a tight, sealed den, I gave the canteen one shake, lit the rag with my lighter, and tossed it down the entrance. It rolled in slow. I stepped back fast. A few seconds later, smoke started to trickle out, thick, gray, acrid. I circled around and found cover behind a wide tree, about 20 yards out, rifle ready, eyes on the entrance. I waited. 10 minutes passed. Nothing. 15. Still nothing. By the 20th minute, I heard something move inside the earth, a scraping sound, then a groan, wet and awful, like a broken animal trying to breathe through mud. Then it appeared. It dragged itself out slow, one leg bent at a hard angle. I recognized that limp. The wound hadn't healed. Its movement was uneven now, like the pain was finally catching up. Smoke clung to its matted fur and clotted limbs. It wheezed as it pulled itself through the dirt. It looked worse up close. Taller than a man, but hunched over, its spine sticking out like a row of broken rocks. And its face, that awful mix of rabbit and dog, was smeared with dark streaks. Its eyes still red, still glowing, even through the smoke. It paused just outside the den, coughing out that same ragged groan. Then it turned. It looked straight at me, even through the dark, through the smoke. Those eyes locked onto mine, like it knew, like it remembered me. I didn't wait. I squeezed the trigger. The rifle kicked back hard into my shoulder. The crack echoed across the ridge. Its head snapped back. Its body dropped without a sound. It lay still. By the time I rolled back into the trailer park, the next morning, the sun had already crept over the horizon, laying a soft orange light across the gravel lots and sagging fences. I parked the truck in front of my trailer, the tires crunching softly beneath me, and stepped out wearing the same bloodied jean jacket from the night before. 2 kids were already outside, bouncing a half-flat ball back and forth. On the cracked loop of road they always played on. One of them was Eli from Lot 12, the same boy who found the sheep the other day. He looked up when he saw me, froze for a moment, squinting like he wasn't sure if it was me or not. His eyes dropped to the stains on my jacket, the dark smear near the collar, then came back up to my face. He didn't say a word, and I didn't offer one. Kids like him are smart in ways adults forget. They know when not to ask. I gave him a short nod and kept walking. Across the park, people were starting to stir. Porch doors creaked open. Someone dragged a trash bin to the curb. A kettle whistled inside a trailer, and a radio played quietly from a cracked window. Most folks didn't know what happened the night before, and I had no plans to stand in the middle of the lot and tell them. But the ones who did know, the ones who watched me leave, with my rifle slung across my back, they were waiting. Frank from Lot 3 leaned against his truck, like always, arms crossed, cigarette hanging loose between 2 fingers. Mrs. Leary stood on her porch in slippers and a housecoat, holding her tea like it might slip through her fingers. I didn't wave or say a word, just looked back, steady and quiet. And in that silence, something passed between us. Something unspoken, but understood. The kids were safe again. The yards were quiet. That was all they needed to know. After a shower and a fresh shirt, I got back in the truck and drove into town. I still had a job to finish. The police station looked just like it did back when I was on the force. Plain brick walls, the faded badge logo on the front window, and the flag out front that never quite flew straight were the only familiar things about the station. Inside, the front desk had been updated since my time, now with a glass partition and 2 newer-looking computers. The young officer behind the desk looked up when I stepped in, gave me a half nod, and asked who I was there to see. I told him I needed Jensen, and he pointed toward the back, with a little too much eagerness in his voice. Probably hadn't seen much action since high school graduation. Jensen was sitting in the same back office he always had, surrounded by papers he never seemed to file. and plaques he never dusted. His hair had thinned, and his gut had thickened, but the minute he saw me, he grinned like we were still partners, walking the beat together. Well, look who the cat dragged in. What? They finally ask you to come teach these rookies how to actually hold a gun, he said, pushing back in his chair. Not quite. I'm here to file a report, I said. That took the grin off his face. He sat up straighter, pulled a pad off his desk, and clicked his pen. I told him everything I needed to about the cave in the ridge, the body I found inside, how it had been there for weeks. I explained that it was Trent McKee, the pumpkin farmer from the next town over. There wasn't much left of the body, but enough to be sure. Jensen listened without interrupting. Any idea what did it? He asked after a long pause. Large wolf. Aggressive. Real territorial. I tracked it last night. I said, Did you kill it? He asked. I nodded to confirm. Then he asked what happened to the body. I burned it, took it to the old junkyard behind Miller's, and set alight. Figure it was safer than leaving it out there, I explained. He raised an eyebrow at that, the kind of look that said he had questions he wasn't going to ask. We'd known each other too long for that kind of thing. He just gave a slow nod and scratched something down on the pad. Well, hell, you still got it, he said after a beat. I gave a tired smile. Barely. You ever think of coming back? Not full time. Just help train the new blood, he said. He clapped me on the shoulder with that same rough hand I remembered from years ago. I left the station, but Jensen's words followed me all the way home. That part about helping out, teaching the new guys. It had sounded like a joke at first, something said in passing. But as I drove past the old farms and empty lots, I started thinking more seriously about it. Retirement was supposed to mean slowing down, living quiet. And for the most part, I'd found peace in that. Fixing fences, patching roofs, casting lines into still water. But these past few days had reminded me of something I'd almost forgotten, that feeling of being useful in a way that mattered. By the time I pulled into the trailer park and saw the kids playing again, like nothing had ever happened, I realized I wasn't as done as I thought. Maybe I didn't wear the badge anymore, but there was still something left in me to give.